Hi there, welcome back. Last week I told you about the Kayangan princesses from the heavens above. This week I'm going to tell you about another group of maidens. This time they're not so gentle, in fact they are quite deadly. I will tell you about the legend of Ulet Mayang. But before we get into it, I think I should tell you a bit about this word Ulet Mayang because not many of us know the meaning of Ulet Mayang. I certainly didn't, and I had to look it up. So, ule means to entreat. In other words, to beg, to plead, or to ask for in an anxious way. In this story, the fishermen entreat the medicine man or the bomo to help their friend who has been captured by the sea spirit. Mayang refers to the coconut palm blossom, which is traditionally used in this region to chase away spirits. What do these two words have in common with each other? I think the best way to explain is by simply telling you the fairy tale. So sit back, relax, chill. I will now tell you the story of Ulet Mayang. A long time ago, a group of fishermen were out at sea. They were happy, the sun was shining, the sea was calm, and they were looking forward to a good catch. Unfortunately, a dark cloud appeared in the sky, a storm came, the wind began to blow, and the water began to churn. So the oldest, most wisest fisherman told the others, "We have to go back. We are not welcome here." But the youngest fisherman there pleaded with the other men to stay a bit longer. He needed a good catch. He wanted to feed his family. So the men felt sorry for him. So they said, "Okay, we'll stay a bit longer." But that was a mistake because within 2 breaths, a huge wall of water came, capsized the boat. All the men fell into the water. These men were quite good swimmers, but icy fingers pulled them down, and when they opened their eyes, they saw 7 beautiful sea princesses dancing under the waves, and they could hear a haunting melody. By some miracle, the bodies of these men washed up ashore the next morning. All of them woke up, they were fit and fine, except for the youngest fisherman, who was fast asleep. He was still alive, but they could not wake him up, so they summoned the medicine man, the bomo. The bomo asked what happened, and they told him about the 7 sea princesses. The bomo said, his soul has been captured by the sea spirits. We need to perform a ritual. So he asked for 3 things: the mayang, pinang, some kemenyan or incense to burn, and he asked for some yellow rice colored by turmeric. The bomo fell into a deep trance. When his mind entered the world under the sea, he saw that the young fisherman was in the arms of the youngest sea princess. She had taken a liking to him. I think she fancied him and she wanted to keep him. The bomo asked her to release the man. He told her, "This is a human man. He does not belong in your world. Please release him." But the sea princess refused, and she asked 2 of her sisters to join her in a battle against the bomo. And how this battle took place was through a dance. The 3 sea princesses started to dance, a magical dance under the waves. Bomo was strong, so he held firm. He continued to negotiate. So the sea princess called upon 2 of her other sisters. So now there were 5 sea princesses dancing under the water. Bomo was getting a bit tired. 5 against 1 is a bit uneven, but he still held firm. He wanted to save this young man. And then another sea princess joined in. So now there were 6 sea princesses in a battle against the bomo. Bomo was getting tired, he was getting weaker, and he almost gave up. But just at that last moment, the 7th sea princess turned up. And the 7th one was the oldest, most wisest sea princess. And she was the older sister. She was the kaka. She looked at her sisters and she told them, "What are you doing? You can't do this. This is a human man. You must release him." She told her sisters, "Let those from the sea return to the sea, and those from the land return to the land." Because the younger sisters always have to follow what the older sister says, they release the man. To thank the sea spirits, the people in this area would give offerings to the sea. These offerings include the things I just mentioned, which were the kemenyan, the mayang, and also turmeric rice. The end. What is the background of this story? The story of ULEK Mayang is said to come from the state of Terengganu on the east coast of Malaysia. As you can see from the map, Terengganu is a coastal state and its people depend heavily on the sea. So it's not surprising really that many myths and legends centering around the sea have originated from this area. The most interesting thing about this fairy tale is that it takes the form of a ritualistic dance which is performed to appease the spirits of the sea. We don't really know what came first. Did the dance come first or did the fairy tale come first? Probably the story came first. The dance was created to represent the story, which is just so cool because I have never come across a fairy tale that takes this kind of form. So how is the dance performed? Ulek Mayang is performed by 7 female dancers who take the role of the sea maidens. They are each dressed in elaborate costume. They have a regal headdress. They all have yellow sashes to sort of sway and mimic the movement of the waves in the sea. 3 to 4 men take the role of the fishermen and the bomo. During the performance, the male dancers fall into a trance and are healed by the bomo, who enters into a sort of tug-of-war battle with the sea princess. The story itself is fascinating, it's compelling, but I think the most intriguing aspect of the story must be the music, the haunting melody and the lyrics that accompany it. Many believe that the song is an old invocation uttered to summon sea spirits. Today, people no longer give offerings to the sea, at least not openly. Ulek Mayang is considered merely a form of classical Malay dance performed during special occasions, sometimes with surprising outcomes. There have been reports that the haunting music and the hypnotic swaying of the dancers can sometimes awaken the spirits and cause either the dancers or a member of the audience to fall into a trance and become hysterical and sometimes possessed. That's spooky. Why do these fishermen give offerings to the sea? In prehistoric times, it was believed that the people living in this region held animistic beliefs, as evidenced by cave drawings in Gua Cha in Kelantan and also the Niah Caves in Sarawak. Animism in Latin means breath, spirit, and life, is the belief that objects, places, and creatures all possess a distinctive spiritual essence. In other words, people believe that there are spirits in the sea, and therefore they must give offerings to these spirits in order to ensure their safety. Eventually, due to trade and migration, other beliefs came into the region. Firstly, it was Hinduism, followed by Islam. In any event, Malay culture is rich in the myths and legends, many of which have existed before the coming of Islam to this country. They all have a mixture of animism, Hinduism, Islamic elements, including specific rituals that are performed before a planting season and even during the fishing period. On the east coast of Malaysia, rituals such as Puja Pantai, which are just offerings to the sea spirits, were performed by fishermen to protect themselves and also to ensure a bountiful catch. So what is this fairy tale really about? I guess during a time when natural phenomena such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and storms couldn't really be understood or explained, people use stories to try and make sense of the world around them. And this is why across the world you have stories about monsters living inside mountains to explain the existence of volcanoes, for example. And as we will see in a future episode, mighty gods have emerged out of rocks in order to form the earth and the sky above. It's not surprising that a fishing community would create a myth surrounding the sea to explain storms and accidental death. My question is why, out of all things, did they create a myth about these 7 sea princesses? Why did they turn these 7 maidens into a siren-like figure out to take the souls of men? Why couldn't they create something like a sea monster? This story cried out for a sort of post-mortem once you finish it. There are so many questions left unanswered. You want to know, what is their motivation? Who are these sea princesses? Where did they come from? Are they naturally malevolent? Or is there some reason or event which turned them into these vengeful spirits? So far, I haven't been able to find any sources or stories which seek to explain this. The only thing I have found was a story in a book called Nights of the Dark Moon by Malaysian author Tutu Dutta. Get the book, it's fantastic. In this interesting retelling of the legend of Ulet Mayang, Tutu writes a sort of prologue to explain why the 7 sisters turned into sea spirits. So in this story, a prince comes across 7 bathing maidens. Sounds familiar, right? He falls in love with the youngest and asks for her hand in marriage. The queen is not happy because she wants the older sisters to marry first, which, I can understand that. But instead of using his words, his power of persuasion, instead of using peaceful methods, the prince blows his top, he gets angry, he immediately declares war. He sends an army there. In order to protect the daughters, the queen hid them in a cave with enough food and water to last them till the end of the war. Unfortunately, the war raged on for longer than expected. By the time the queen came back to the cave, her 7 daughters were dead. Distraught, the queen buried her daughters at sea, hoping that their spirits can roam free in order to avenge their deaths. When the prince heard about the deaths of the 7 princesses, he was full of remorse, a bit too late, and he felt so guilty that he immediately stopped the war. He decided to go home on his, you guessed it, on his boat. So that night he had a dream about his lovely princess, and when he woke up, she was there in his cabin. She invited him out onto the deck of the boat. When he was on the deck of the boat, he saw that all her sisters were there, and they were there sort of at the edge of the boat, beckoning him. He walked towards them. They grabbed him and they were about to throw him overboard. But just at the last moment, the oldest sister stepped in. She looked at her younger sisters and said, "Stop this. What are you doing?" And because she was the oldest and she was the kakak, they all had to follow what she said. So they released the prince, which is a shame. Personally, I would have just let the prince drown. He could have just spoken nicely to the queen, tried to persuade her, but instead he sent an army to her kingdom. He caused lots of death. He caused the deaths of these innocent princesses. To me, the most interesting aspect of this story is that on the surface, it is so simple. It is so flat, in fact. No one has a name. The places are not identified. These sea princesses are not distinguishable from each other, apart from maybe the oldest. Most importantly, we don't know why they are doing what they are doing. In spite of the transparent, flat nature of this tale, it forces us to think hard, to think deep as we try to make sense of the world in which these characters live. It literally forces us to fill in the blanks, and therein lies the beauty and magic of fairy tales. It is loose and malleable, and it forces our minds to engage in a sort of creative endeavor to figure out the meaning behind the stories, to dig deeper. It forces us to use our imagination and to even put ourselves in the place of these characters. So what do you think about this fairy tale? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please do leave a comment. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel because it would help me to produce better content. In each video, I'm trying to improve. I know in the first video, instead of looking at the camera, I was looking over here. The second video, the editing was really choppy and rough, so I'll try to improve on this video and further videos. Next week, we'll be moving away from princesses, and instead we'll look at a prince who was cursed to be born in the body of a pig. I will be telling you the story of the Malay tale of the Pig King, which is based on Hikayat Raja Babi. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and I will see you in the next video.